the heart of a child. Amora's heart raced as she sprinted down the dusty road, her voice trembling with fear. "Where is my daughter? Where is my Chidinma?" she cried, her eyes darting left and right as if searching for a glimpse of her little girl. People gathered around, whispering amongst themselves. Yua, a shopkeeper from across the street, tried to comfort her. "Amora, calm down. We'll find her," she said softly, though the worry in her eyes betrayed her calm words. Just then, a car screeched to a halt in front of them, and a woman stepped out, clutching a child to her chest. "Is this your daughter?" the woman asked, her face lined with concern. Amora gasped in relief as she rushed to take Chidinma into her arms. Tears flowed freely as she held her daughter close, vowing never to let her out of her sight again. The woman who had returned Chidinma introduced herself as Linda, a passerby who had saved the child from a dangerous situation. She almost ran into the street. "You should really be more careful," Linda scolded gently. "I know," Amora whispered, feeling the weight of her guilt. "Thank you for saving her." Linda shook her head. "Just make sure it doesn't happen again. Children are precious. It's easy to lose sight of that." Chidinma, quiet until now, looked up at her mother with wide eyes. "Mommy, why are you crying?" she asked innocently. Amora kissed her daughter's forehead. "Because I love you so much, my dear," she said, her heart still pounding. Back home, Amora sat with Chidinma, staring out the window as the sun set over the small city. The flickering street lights began to dot the horizon, and the sounds of children playing in the street filled the air. "Mom," Chidinma said softly, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "Why don't we have a house like yours?" Amora's chest tightened. She knew Chidinma noticed their struggles, even though she tried her best to hide them. They lived in a tiny one-room apartment, barely scraping by with the little money Amora made from selling fruits in the market. "Because we're still looking for our blessing," Amora answered gently. "One day, we'll have a house of our own, just like yours." Chidinma nodded, though she didn't fully understand. She only knew her mother worked hard and loved her deeply. The next day, as Amora was selling fruits at the market, a man named Ikin approached her store. He was a well-dressed businessman with a kind face and a gentle voice. "You have the best oranges in the market," he said, picking one up and smiling. Amora smiled shyly. "Thank you, sir." "You know," Ikin continued, "I've been looking for someone to help around my house. My wife is expecting a baby, and we could use a reliable hand." Amora's heart skipped a beat. She had been praying for a better job, something stable that would allow her to take better care of Chidinma. "I would be honored to help," she said, her voice barely concealing her excitement. "Come by my house tomorrow, and we'll discuss the details," Ikin said, handing her a card with his address. Amora clutched the card in her hand as if it were a lifeline. This could be the opportunity she had been waiting for. The next morning, Amora woke up early. She prepared Chidinma's breakfast and dressed her in her best clothes, knowing this could be the start of something better. After a quick meal, they made their way to Ikin's house. When they arrived, Amora was stunned. Ikin's home was a large, beautiful house with tall gates and a sprawling garden. Chidinma's eyes widened at the sight of the flowers and a swing set in the yard. A woman appeared at the door, cradling her pregnant belly. "You must be Amora," she said warmly. "I'm Ifioma, Ikin's wife. Welcome to our home." Amora smiled nervously. "Thank you for having me. I'm ready to work hard and do my best." Ifioma nodded. "We'll start slow. You'll help around the house, and if all goes well, we'll see about making things permanent. Chidinma can stay here with us too, if that's alright." Amora couldn't believe her luck. Not only was she being offered a stable job, but Chidinma would be safe and cared for while she worked. Weeks passed, and everything seemed to be going well. Amora quickly proved herself as a diligent worker, and Ifioma grew fond of Chidinma. However, not everyone in the household was happy. Ikin's teenage daughter, Uju, from his previous marriage, had been watching from the shadows. She didn't like the idea of strangers in the house, especially Amora and her daughter. Uju's mother had left the family years ago, and she felt protective of her father. Why are they even here? Uju muttered under her breath one evening as she saw Chidinma playing in the garden. Her friend Neko laughed. You're the boss's daughter. Why don't you show them who's really in charge? A smirk formed on Uju's face. Maybe I will. One afternoon, while Amora was busy cleaning the kitchen, Uju approached Chidinma, who was playing quietly with her dolls. Hey, Chidinma, Uju said sweetly. Do you want to see something cool? Chidinma, always curious, nodded eagerly. Uju led her to a small shed behind the house. Go in, she urged, there's something amazing inside. Chidinma stepped in, but before she could react, Uju slammed the door shut and locked it from the outside. Let's see how long you last in there, Uju whispered, a wicked grin on her face. Inside the shed, Chidinma's heart pounded in the darkness. She banged on the door, calling for her mother. Mama. Mama. But no one could hear her. As the sun began to set, Amora called for Chidinma to come inside for dinner. But there was no response. Panic set in as she searched the house and the yard, but her daughter was nowhere to be found. Ifeoma noticed the commotion and came to help. She must be around here somewhere. Don't worry, we'll find her. Minutes turned into an hour, and still, no sign of Chidinma. Amora's heart raced as terrible thoughts crossed her mind. What if she wandered off? What if someone took her? Ikin, sensing the gravity of the situation, called the neighbors to help search. Soon, the entire street was involved in the search for Chidinma. Finally, it was a young boy from the neighborhood who found the shed. He had heard faint cries coming from inside. Hey! I think someone's in here, he shouted. Amora rushed over as Ikin grabbed the keys and unlocked the door. There, huddled in a corner, was Chidinma, her eyes red from crying. Mama, she sobbed as Amora pulled her into a tight embrace. I was so scared. Amora's relief quickly turned to anger as she demanded to know how her daughter ended up locked in the shed. But no one had seen anything, and Uju was nowhere to be found. Later that evening, Uju returned home, pretending as if nothing had happened. But her smirk gave her away. Amora, still shaken by the day's events, confronted her. Do you know what happened to my daughter? Amora asked, her voice trembling. Uju shrugged, feigning innocence. I don't know what you're talking about. Before Amora could respond, Ikin walked in. What's going on here? Amora, torn between her anger and fear of losing her job, hesitated. I just want to know how my daughter ended up locked in the shed. Ikin frowned, his gaze shifting to Uju, who shifted nervously under his scrutiny. Uju, do you know anything about this? Uju tried to maintain her composure but faltered. I didn't mean to lock her in there. I was just playing a game. Ikin's face darkened. That was no game, Uju. You could have seriously hurt her. Uju looked down, suddenly realizing the gravity of her actions. I'm sorry. Amora, though furious, took a deep breath. I don't want any trouble, she said quietly. But please, don't ever let this happen again. My daughter is everything to me. Ikin nodded solemnly. I promise you, Amora, it won't happen again. As Uju stormed off in shame, Amora hugged Chidinma tightly. She knew that life in this house wasn't going to be as easy as she thought, but she was determined to stay strong for her daughter's sake. Though Uju had apologized, her resentment towards Chidinma continued to grow. She couldn't understand why her father and stepmother seemed so fond of Amora and her daughter. Each time she saw Chidinma laughing with Ifeoma or sitting on her father's lap, her jealousy deepened. I don't know why they treat her like she's one of us, Uju muttered to Neka, her closest friend. She's just a poor girl who doesn't belong here. Neka, who often enjoyed fueling Uju's anger, nodded. Maybe they want to replace you. You know how stepmothers can be. Uju clenched her fist. I won't let that happen. Despite Uju's bitterness, something unexpected began to happen. While Uju kept her distance, Ifeoma's love for Chidinma grew. Ifeoma had lost her own daughter years ago and saw Chidinma as a blessing, filling the void in her heart. One afternoon, as Amora cleaned the house, Ifeoma approached her. Amora, there's something I want to talk to you about. Amora set down her broom, concern filling her eyes. Yes, Ma. I've noticed how much Chidinma enjoys spending time with me, Ifeoma began. I've been thinking. I want to take her to school with Uju. She's a bright girl and deserves a good education. Amora's heart swelled with gratitude. Oh, Ma. That would be a dream come true. But I don't have the money to pay for her school fees. Ifeoma smiled gently. Don't worry about the fees. Ikin and I will handle it. Tears welled in Amora's eyes. I don't know how to thank you. There's no need to thank me, Ifeoma said, placing a hand on Amora's shoulder. You've been a blessing to this house. It's the least we can do. The next morning, Chidinma found herself dressed in a new school uniform, ready to attend the prestigious city school where Uju was already a student. She beamed with excitement, hugging her mother tightly before getting into the car. Remember what I told you, Amora whispered. Focus on your studies and be kind, no matter what. Chidinma nodded eagerly, waving as the car pulled out of the driveway. As the car sped toward the school, Uju sat beside Chidinma, arms crossed and lips pursed in silent anger. She hated the thought of sharing her school with Chidinma. I don't need you tagging along with me at school, Uju hissed as they approached the gate. Just stay out of my way. Chidinma looked at her with wide eyes but said nothing, deciding to focus on the adventure ahead. She had always dreamed of going to a big school, and now that it was happening, she wouldn't let Uju's harsh words ruin it. At school, things started off well for Chidinma. She quickly made friends with a few girls in her class and earned the praise of her teachers for being both intelligent and hardworking. However, Uju's jealousy followed her into the classroom. Whenever Chidinma performed well on a test, Uju would roll her eyes or make snide remarks to her friends. One day, after Chidinma received the highest score in a math quiz, Uju couldn't hold back any longer. You think you're so smart, don't you? Uju sneered in front of the class. Chidinma, caught off guard, stammered, I was just trying my best. Well, maybe your best isn't good enough for this school, Uju shot back, her voice dripping with contempt. Chidinma felt the eyes of the entire class on her, and for the first time, she began to doubt herself. After school, Chidinma walked home slowly, her head hanging low. She had never been bullied before, and Uju's words had left a deep mark on her confidence. When she reached home, Amora noticed immediately that something was wrong. What happened, my dear? She asked, kneeling beside Chidinma. Chidinma hesitated before telling her mother everything, the mean words, the looks from the other students, and how Uju seemed to despise her. Amora's heart ached as she listened to her daughter. My sweet girl, she said softly, people will always find a reason to bring you down when you're doing well. But you must never let that stop you. You are smart, and you are strong. No one can take that from you. Chidinma nodded, though her heart still felt heavy. Determined to make Chidinma's life harder, Uju devised a plan. She had overheard her father talking about a charity event he was organizing at school, where children would donate supplies to those in need. Uju knew how important this event was to her father, and she saw an opportunity to get back at Chidinma. The night before the event, Uju sneaked into the room where the donations were kept. She grabbed a few of the supplies meant for the poor children and hid them in Chidinma's school bag. The next day at school, Uju waited for her moment. During the event, as the teachers collected the donations, Uju stood up. Excuse me, Miss Adiz, she called out to the teacher. I think Chidinma has something in her bag that doesn't belong to her. The teacher frowned and called Chidinma forward. Chidinma, please bring your bag. Chidinma's heart raced as she handed over her bag, not knowing what was happening. When the teacher opened it, the stolen supplies fell out. The room erupted in whispers. I didn't steal them. Chidinma cried, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how they got there. But no one seemed to believe her. That evening, Amora sat with Chidinma as she sobbed in her lap. I didn't do it, Mama. I didn't steal anything, Chidima repeated over and over. Amora stroked her daughter's hair, her heart breaking for her. I believe you, she whispered. We'll get through this together.
I hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, comment, share it with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.